We're going to go. So Scap, just so you know, we're going to do live on Facebook, and we have a bunch of different like Facebook groups that we started. So so the name of my company is Boston Connect Real Estate. And so we have like, and my website is bostonconnect.com, but then we have like Pembroke Connect and Hanover Connect, like all our local towns around us. So we're going to go live on those. And then what we can do is download that and I'll put it onto YouTube. So if you want to take any snippets or anything, snippets, is that a word? Snippet? Snippet.
It works for me.
Yeah. Mary, you want to join us? No, Mary said no. I have asked 4 agents if they want to join us and they said no.
Mary said no.
Mary said no. Mary, come say hello to, at least come say hello to Rob.
How rude is that?
How rude is she? And this is Scap. He's from Clubhouse. He's an appraiser.
Is that Mary?
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Mary, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
All right, just checking in. I heard you were in the area.
Yeah, I'm running in on 2 wheels like usual. So I'm actually going to meet an appraiser in about 20 minutes. So I'm going to print out some stuff and then I'm going to get my butt on the road.
All right.
Good luck.
Can you give them comps?
Scap, do appraisers really like it when we give you comps? I think it's situational.
I mean, I do. I take everything, but some appraisers no. So I mean, but do it anyway to cover your butt.
So I've had appraisers who flat out reject me, and then usually you flat out reject me, and they're like, "Yeah, don't tell me how to do my job." And then I've had appraisers who actually like the one I'm going to meet, and he said, if you would like to supply me with anything, you don't have to because I know how to do my job, but if you'd like to, I was like, nah, it couldn't hurt, could it? New construction, I'll help you out.
Yeah, but give them everything you got. Like, just see what they do with it. It's up to them afterwards.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna give it the good fight. But it was nice to meet you.
Same.
Rob, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
All right. Good luck at your appraisal. This is for Saturday, so we don't have to do a show Saturday. All right, good. I'll be in Rhode Island. All right, Rob, you want me to set my timer?
That's fine. I'll start here because remember we have to come in technically under an hour. So we had to
57
times we recorded a show. Kevin said it went a little too long. He had to cut stuff out. So I'd rather not have to do that. So I would give you, the music and everything. Can you hear?
Yeah. I can hear the music, but with George, I cannot. So that's one of my problems too. Like we don't know when to end the show because I can't hear the music, but.
Can you hear it now?
Yep.
Okay. I
Black Eyed Peas.
Okay. So yeah, for whatever reason, it's not sending you either loud enough or any audio back, which seems weird. So we'll have to look into that if it keeps happening.
Okay. You okay?
Yeah, I'm just.
All right. Well,
you tell me when you're ready for me to record.
All right. Can we play the music and everything to just sort of like get the whole?
Yeah, I'm going to play the opening theme and everything when you're ready.
All right. Yeah, we're ready. Mel's just going live on Facebook and everything. So I think we're ready. Scap, you ready?
Oh, his mic is muted, I think.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting that sometimes.
That's okay. I have a great sign. It says you're on mute. And then Mark, say your last name again.
Scafeditz.
Scafeditz, just how I have it written.
Scafeditz.
Scafeditz. Don't you like that, Rob?
No, it's good. It's a good radio name.
And he goes by Scap.
Scap.
Hey, Rob, are you on Clubhouse?
Clubhouse. What did
no, if you have to ask, you're not.
Okay.
I'll have to send you an invite.
All right. I don't know what that is.
You might enjoy it. It's
okay.
Just yeah, it's a club.
All right.
Where all the cool kids hang out, I guess.
Wow. All right.
Some have a treehouse.
Here we go. Yeah. Pembroke has a treehouse, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Pembroke does have a treehouse. I've never been to it.
Heard good things though.
Yeah, I've heard real good things about it.
All right, here we go, guys.
All right, thanks, Rob. Is Larry with you too?
No, it's just me today.
Okay. Oh, I forgot my
Talk Real Estate with Sharon McNamara, sponsored by Boston Connect Real Estate Services.
Hi, I'm Sharon McNamara, and you are listening to Talk Real Estate Roundtable. Let me share a little bit about my background before we get started. I am the broker owner of Boston Connect Real Estate, a boutique real estate firm that is home to over 30 real estate sales and marketing consultants who service home buyers and home sellers throughout Boston, the South Shore, the South Coast, and Cape Cod. Our firm takes pride in assisting our clients in the next chapter of their lives by taking a holistic approach to their real estate endeavors. We believe that every move should be a moving experience. Every week, my real estate team member, Mary Baker, and I, along with the director of Boston Connect Real Estate, Melissa Wallace, provide you with our unique marketing approach to selling homes and share with you our expertise in navigating the home buying process. We like to mix it up sometimes, so not only will you hear our perspective on real estate topics, but you will hear the expert thoughts and opinions of some of our real estate agents at Boston Connect Real Estate and the preferred professionals that we trust. Be part of our roundtable. If you have any questions during the show, please call 781-837-4900. We'd love to talk real estate. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you listen to podcasts at Talk Real Estate Roundtable. If you would like a one-on-one consultation with me and my team or one of the dedicated agents at Boston Connect Real Estate to discuss your real estate needs, you can connect with us at bostonconnect.com or 781-826-8000. Now, sit back, relax, take good notes, and let's talk real estate. Hello to all my South Shore neighbors. This is Sharon McNamara, and you are, of course, listening to Talk Real Estate Roundtable here on WATD. We are also streaming live on Facebook, but you're not going to see it because this is a Saturday show. It's pre-recorded, but if you want to see it and watch it, you can go back into our Facebook feed and find that. I have my sidekick with me today. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
I don't even have to say your name. I'm just going to call you Melissa. It's almost like you're Madonna. Like you only need the one name. That's how. I mean, you have callers calling you on your cell phone.
I do, yeah. Long time listener, first time caller to my cell phone. Yeah,
funny.
Yeah, we got some fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a special guest with us today, and I'm really excited about it. This is going to be a really, really good topic, and I apologize in advance. This is pre-recorded, but if you have any questions about this topic, feel free to text me because I am available. You just have to text me. I'm just not in town. 781-294-4848. And I can always get to our guest for you, but I think that this is going to be a good one.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, you have a new friend and you invited him on the show.
I do. Yeah. We're longtime friends now since this morning. But you know what? I got to say, what a trooper. I literally reached out to him this morning. As everybody knows, I talk about Clubhouse all the time. I'm trying to figure out a way to get this show on Clubhouse as well. So that's in the works, but he's an appraiser. I've listened to him in the past. I legitimately love his energy. He's from Atlanta, Georgia, but I could always tell he was a city guy at heart. Like I just knew there was a part of me that knew he was, because city people, we all connect with each other. So he goes by Scap, but his name is Mark Scafeditz. Right? Scafeditz, Mark Scafeditz. And
You got it.
Yeah. And I love like your tagline. So on your website. So why don't you tell all of our WAT listeners a little bit about you and I love your tagline. Just say it.
Well, my name is Mark Scafeditz. I'll do my whole Clubhouse intro here for everybody.
Okay.
My name is Mark Scafeditz, and I am a certified residential real estate appraiser here in the Atlanta, Georgia area. I am also president of the American Guild of Appraisers out of Washington, D.C. I've been a real estate appraiser since about 2003, where I started my career in New Jersey. Yes, I'm a Jersey guy. I moved down south and I opened up my own company, What's It Worth Appraisal Services, in the Atlanta metro area back in 2007, just before everything went down the tubes.
Yeah.
So actually it wasn't a bad time to actually start it. But, I've been living down here in Atlanta. I kind of service pretty much most of the metro area with residential real estate appraising. And I've gotten really involved with, like yourself, with Clubhouse. I run my own 2 Facebook groups for real estate appraisers, for independent real estate appraisers. And then the other one is for anybody looking to become an appraiser or is currently a trainee, so that they can get the proper information and get good guidance on where to go to get into the profession. And I started my own podcast. I also started my own blog page. It's called Scap the Appraiser. Mm-hmm. And my tagline is appraising the real issues. Mm-hmm. Is what my tagline is. It's just kind of something I came up with because I just saw so much misinformation out there. And I saw a lot of other podcasts and a lot of other people out there just providing the same old boring stuff, the same stuff out there about the appraisal profession. But I wanted to take it another step further and get into not just appraisers. I want to get it out to consumers. I want to get out to real estate agents. I want to get out to investors, policymakers. So I'm trying to keep it real per se and talk about the real issues out there and not just the same stuff that you can find on Google with a Google search.
Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, I know one time I had listened to you on Clubhouse. You were at one of the rooms that we were in, and I being in the business and the industry as long as I have been for over 21 years now, you can almost tell the people who know what they're talking about and the people who are faking what they're talking about. And I was like, he's the real deal. So you can even use that. You're the real deal with your appraising the real, or dealing with the real issues there. So we're really excited to have you. Today's topic for all of our listeners, I thought it would be a really good topic to discuss, especially because we just went through this emotional wave of, people just emotionally bidding on houses. And it was just crazy. We've been saying that the word that we've used is that it was reckless. In my opinion, it was reckless what was going on out there. But now we're sort of having in our neck of the woods, I guess, we're having sort of a little difficult time sort of and giving houses a market of value because people and sellers seem to be stuck on that other number. And I know, Mel, you and I had this conversation, was it last week? And I was just like, listen, where's the market? Did I miss the market?
Did I miss the market? No, you're, no matter what day of the week, month, whatever, you're in a market. So you might have missed the last market, but you're in the current market. So what does that mean?
Exactly.
But yeah, so we're going to be talking about, how you sort of differentiate the different values. So there's appraised value, which is why we have our guest on today. Market value, which is something that we've talked about recently a lot on the show, and how Sharon gets that market value, and the assessed value.
Yeah. Because I think that they're all three different numbers. Would you agree with that? And would you prefer me call you Scap, or would you prefer I call you Mark?
Nah, call me Scap. That's fine. That's what everybody else calls me. I might as well just keep it going.
You might as well keep it going. So what do you agree with that statement?
I agree with it, but I also have to disagree with one thing that you said is that, that appraised value and market value are different. And that might be in the sense of what agents and other people perceive. But what appraisers are doing is appraising for the market value of that home. So it's not just some separate number. I mean, you might get a separate number or different numbers from different appraisers. However, our job is to appraise that property for its current market value.
And I need a snippet of that.
Yeah.
Because that's what we've been trying to express to people because we're having the hard time with that last 6 months of emotional value.
Well, are you saying that because you're essentially looking at the same information and like you might come in a month or two after the real estate agent has done their analysis? So then you're now have those 2 months or that 1 month of information that maybe the agent didn't have, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that is correct. But I mean, also in the same respect, I do, when I'm doing any kind of appraisal for, say it's for a pre-listing that you have, and you're struggling with trying to come up with the price of what that is. I'm going to come out there and I'm going to do my job and appraiser for what I believe to be the market value of that home in the current market as of that day. So yes, you might have priced the home, say 2 months ago, and now you finally get it under contract and say you had it for 500,000. Well, the market could change. Obviously it could have gone up, it could still be the same. It could have gone down. However, I'm appraising it for the day that I'm actually out there inspecting the property, not as of the day that you actually priced it. So.
And maybe we should have kept the word because I had I had Julia, who is our administrative coordinator here in the office and works on our agenda. I had her change it because we call it a comparative market analysis. So with my analysis, we're looking at a lot of different things, not just the sold. And I know, Mark, we had a great, I just called him Mark for some reason when I want to call him Scap. We had a great conversation earlier about that very issue of agents sometimes saying, I looked at this house down the street, it's on the market. and that must be the value of my house. Why don't we, is there anything that you want to start with let me start that way?
It's your show. You go right along. I'll follow along and tag along as best I possibly can.
All right, perfect. All right, so Mel, do you have some questions there for him, or I don't want to just step on your toes because I tend to talk too much.
You take the reins, because I feel like this is not something that I'm privy to in our everyday sort of.
So I got it.
Yeah, you take the reins.
So let's go back and think about the last several months in the industry. And we put a house on the market, just to use round numbers. We put a house on the market for $500,000. We get 20 offers on that property and it ends up selling for $600,000. Okay. When you're doing your appraisals now, are you keeping in mind at all what that list price was? Or are you just looking at that sale price because that's emotional value? Right. So everybody's different. Not everybody is willing to pay $100,000 more for a house. So what numbers are you looking at?
Well, first, I mean, I will preface this where I see a lot of people and a lot of agents, especially during that last crazy market where they were actually listing a home and then they'd get it under contract and they'd go and change that list price to think that they could fool the appraiser. And that's not true, because the as appraisers, we have to analyze everything. So we have to go back and analyze the history of that sale, of the listing, of the comps, everything. So we're looking at everything. So we're going to see what you listed it at. We're going to see the price changes. We're going to see everything. And that's part of our job, is to look at that, to analyze it. Now, in your question, when, you have it priced at 500,000 and say I come in 2 weeks later to come out and appraise that property. Again, I'm looking at the market value of that property. I am looking at all the factors, not just what's sold out there, not just what has actually is listed out there. I'm looking at everything. And I'm looking at pending sales. I'm looking at active listings. I'm looking at the sold sales, and I'm looking at 1 to 3 months back, or as early as maybe yesterday. I'm just looking at all of the data going back in time, obviously, or to current time. And I have to decipher it. I have to look at it and go, okay, well, this is the sale here. This is a comp here. This is a comp here. And go through those comps, really, really analyze everything that I'm looking at. While you may have somebody that actually offers way over what that list price is, again, I'm going to be the guy that's going to, well, as an appraiser, I should actually call you up as an agent. If you sold that property for $600,000 over, or whatever your contract is, I need to find out the details of that. I need to find out what's going on with that sale. Everything else seems to be in line with this number. However, now you got this offer price, or you got this, somebody offering this much on it. Did you have multiple offers on it? What were those multiple offers on it? Somebody that just comes in and says, I'm just going to offer $100,000 over everybody else. And you have, say, 25 offers on that. And most of them are in line with, say, you listed it at 500, and most of them are in line at, say, 525, 530, 535, somewhere around in there. Well, that's kind of painting a picture that's what most of the market participants are willing to pay for this property. And then you get somebody that comes out and says, oh, here's $100,000 over the list price, waive everything, appraisals, contingencies, everything out there. Well, that's kind of what we call like an undue stimulus. It's kind of like they're acting by their emotions. And, we can't appraise emotions. You can't appraise motivations. You can't look at those as factors in what somebody is deciding to do. They may want that house much more badly than somebody else, and they have the ability to do it. So as appraisers, we really have to go in and look at all the data that's out there for us, not just what's in front of us on MLS.
And that motivation, that's such a key point. And that's, it's just so funny because sellers, I think, sort of lost their mind in all of this, thinking, everybody, this is what I always say, Scap, nobody has an ugly baby. So no matter whose house I go to, they think their house is better than somebody else's, right? And they just wanted more and more and more. And I tried to explain to them, we don't know what the motivation is, why somebody would have, in our scenario here, gone $100,000 over. But I mean, one instance could be this house abuts the person who bought it, and now they can do a subdivision out back. So of course it was worth $100,000 more to them, right? Or you know what? This was my mother's house when she was a young child, and emotionally it means that much to me. So I'm willing to pay $100,000 over for it. Right. I mean,
yeah. And we hear it all the time. You hear, and I think a lot of people, this is how they think, that if one person's willing to pay that much for that property, then it's worth that much in the marketplace. Well, one person to me doesn't make a market. Okay. So, one person can do whatever they want, especially if they have their own money. If it's cash, they can pay whatever they want for an asset. They're free to do that. But when you're borrowing somebody else's money, they want to know what that house is worth or what that asset is worth in the marketplace. So just to give you a quick little tidbit here. So appraisers use a definition of market value that might differ from what other agents and other people out there use, and they may not know about this. So I'll just kind of read it to you a little bit, and maybe this will help. So Fannie Mae is who we do most of our appraisals for. Okay. So we have to follow their rules, regulations, guidelines, but the definition of market value that an appraiser follows is this: it's the most probable price which a property should bring in a competitive and open market under all conditions requisite to be a fair sale, the buyer and seller each acting prudently, knowledgeably, and assuming the price is not affected by undue stimulus. Implicit in this definition is the consummation of the sale as a specified date and the passing of title from seller to buyer, conditions whereby the buyer and seller are typically motivated. Both parties are well informed and advised, and each is acting in what he or she considers his or her own best interests. A reasonable time is allowed for exposure in the open market, and payment is made in terms of cash, US dollars, and is unaffected by special or creative financing or sales concessions granted by anyone associated with the sale. So out of all that, the things I think that everybody needs to remember is these key words: the most probable price a property should bring in a competitive and open market under all conditions requisite to fair sale. That's the big key in this that a lot of people don't understand. They just think that if somebody offers something, that's what it's worth and somebody accepts it. Well, go back to your example of multiple offers. Most people were offering in one realm or one spectrum of that. And one person just came out of nowhere and said, here, I'm just going to give you this because I can.
It's so funny because what I wrote down when you were given the definition is most probable price, because I think that was the part that stood out to me right away. I mean, it was the first sentence that you said, but it was like, it really was what that came to mind. So what are you seeing like with, the last 6 months? Let's just talk about this crazy market. Were all of your appraisals that you were doing, were you having a hard time getting comps for these properties that you were trying to appraise? Were they coming in at the price, or were they under?
I mean, there's a mix there. In the last couple of months, obviously the market shifted. We all know that. So it's pretty much shifted everywhere. Prior to this last year, like we discussed earlier, there was a mass craziness, because of low interest rates, and people had free money and they were just, whatever. They just didn't care at that point. Now the market shifted, obviously. We're kind of getting back to that market that we had pre-pandemic where, everything's starting to be equal. People, buyers don't have the upper hand. Sellers really don't have the upper hand. But I think a lot of what I'm seeing is there's a lot of what I call, I can forget the word now, but it's a lot of people out there just still believing that they actually can get what that market was 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago.
Unrealistic expectations.
That's what it's called. Unrealistic expectation therapy. Just that's what I call it.
I was curious to see if you were seeing that down there, because like we said, you're in Atlanta, correct?
Yes.
And we're on the South Shore of Massachusetts. So, and I know that everything that's been happening the past couple of years, especially during the pandemic, has been happening sort of nationwide with real estate. But it's interesting to hear firsthand from somebody who is in Atlanta, in another city, that they're seeing sort of similar things that we saw and are currently seeing here.
And just to add to that, to your question, is I'm really not seeing, and it's really hard for me to say, I'm not really seeing things, my appraisals are not, typically appraising over. They're not typically appraising under. I'm like I said, I'm trying to appraise for market value. I don't believe that there's ever such thing as a low appraisal. I mean, it just depends on who's doing the appraisal, the market that they are in, the facts, the data, and the information that they have to develop their professional opinion of value. So I don't believe that there's ever such thing as a low one.
Mm-hmm. Well,
however,
that's a good point. That is the value. The problem wasn't that there was a low value, appraised value. It was a high offer.
Yeah, it could be that it was a high offer. It could be that the contract was or the listing was listed too high. So that's what we're seeing now is we're seeing a lot of listings coming down in price, coming down, getting dropped in price multiple times because that unrealistic expectation of homeowners thinking that they can get this high amount and people are still willing to pay for it. It's just not there. And you're also seeing now that with things turning, there's not a lot of sales out there. So I would say, a lot of people believe, you want to believe that the most recent sales are what's indicative of the market. And that really truly is. However, I could go back in time. I could look at historical data. I could look at things to actually come up with what I'm looking at. But I don't really think that I don't think that the market's crashing or anything like that. I just think it is what it is right now. And it's not what it was last year.
Yeah. And rightfully so. It was reckless. I mean, that's how I feel. It was just out of control. I mean, this is normalization, right? Isn't that what everybody's been saying? It's this is normal.
Yeah.
You call it reckless. I call it an undue influenced market. And that was because you had COVID hit. And as the market was generally going well, COVID hit, put a halt to everything. Then you had another factor. The federal government got involved and said, let's just drop interest rates to all-time lows. Combine that with COVID. Now you've got businesses, corporations saying, look, we don't care where you go anymore. It's 2022. We don't need brick and mortar buildings. Go work remotely. You can do your job just as well. Well, guess what? That just created a mass frenzy of people just saying, I'm finally can get out of this expensive area I'm in, sell my 1,000 square foot bungalow for 2.5 million and move to the South and buy a 27,000 square foot home for, $500,000. So, that to me was not really a good market, a healthy market. Yeah. It was too many factors involved.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things now when I'm doing the CMAs that I'm doing, I like to say the numbers that we saw were artificially inflated by emotion. That's period. Amen. That's just the way that it is. I know, Mel, you had a couple questions that you wanted to ask as well.
Yeah. These two questions popped into my head after you said who is doing the appraisal. So my first question would be to sort of backtrack a little bit. So you are an appraiser. You told our listeners that. How did you get into that? Is it difficult to become an appraiser? What are the requirements in order to be an appraiser? Is it you become an appraiser and you can appraise anything all over the country, or is it specific to your area?
Well, first thing is, obviously it's going to be state specific. There's different licenses. There's a trainee license. There's a licensed appraiser. There's a certified appraiser, which is what I am. And then there's certified general. Certified general appraisers are mostly go into the commercial space and appraise commercial properties, and they can go all over the place. Certified, which is what I'm at, is just below that, but I can only do residential properties, and I could do them up to a couple $1 million. I could do those properties. Licensed, you could only do up to a certain amount, and you don't have the qualifications of a certified appraiser. Now, to get into it, you have to look into your states. Each state may have their own different types of requirements. I think most of the time it's pretty general across the board for whatever state you're in. It's kind of a national type thing. I think here in Georgia, it's 2,500 hours worth of experience you got to get, or and take classes. I think it's 200 and some odd, or 200 and something hours or something you have to take as a trainee. Then you have to find a mentor after you pass that. And then you have to find
hours is a lot. I mean, what do you consider? What is one appraisal?
But trust me, there's a lot that goes into appraising that a lot of people don't understand. And there's a lot of things you have to abide by and learn. It's not just finding comps and magically coming up with numbers for adjustments. You have to learn how to do all this stuff, and you have to learn a lot of different rules, regulations. We go by something called USPAP, the Uniform Professional Standards of Appraisal Practice. And that's like our Bible. And there are very strict rules that you have to follow within the appraisal profession. So there are a lot of requirements. And then once you actually get through your trainee period, you find a mentor and work for them for, I think it's typically like two years. You have to work under a mentor to learn your market, learn what you're doing, start signing appraisals. Then you can go take and sit down for your license exam or your certified exam and actually start to go off on your own. So there's a lot that goes into it.
And, and rightfully so. I mean, and I'm surprised that real estate agents, our industry, the bar is so low to get in and to stay in that I feel maybe we should have more guidelines like that. I mean, 2,500 hours is a lot of hours. I mean, is there a shortage of appraisers?
All right, let's get to this question because I love this question. That's the narrative out there. And you know what? This brings up a very good point. Yes, appraisers are aging. Yes, there is not as many as there were in the previous years, but there's many factors that most people don't understand why. A lot of people think that there's a barrier to get into the profession, and they think it's because of all the requirements, and they think it's because a lot of trainees can't find a mentor to take them on in order to get those experience hours. But there's factors that people don't know. And those factors kind of started around 2007, 2008, when the crash hit. We had our lovely attorney general up there in the state of New York, Mr. Andrew Cuomo, who, actually, got caught up with investments and stuff. And he created what was called the Home Valuation Code of Conduct, which overnight stripped every appraiser throughout the country, all of their clients, just gone overnight. So every relationship we built, gone. And they were blaming appraisers for the crash, and they needed a barrier or a third party in between the lenders and the appraisers. I don't buy it. Okay. It's just, I don't buy it, but this is what happened. And they created what's now called appraisal management companies, although appraisal management companies have been around before that, but now they were put into the forefront, and they create panels of appraisers. And once they started creating their panel of appraisers, a 23-year appraiser that's experienced like me in my area is now pretty much similarly compared to somebody who just got their license. Oh. And they started, the way that AMCs would get paid is that they basically get paid a portion of the appraisal fee. So if you're paying $700 for an appraisal and you think, wow, that's how much an appraisal costs, I'll pay that. What you don't realize is that AMC is either bidding it out to find a cheaper appraiser, or they're just sending it to an appraiser on their panel that may not even be in your area or may not even live locally.
Which is very, very, that has happened to me in the past, because it's like having somebody on there with blinders. And I almost choked one day when I saw somebody pull up to one that I knew it was going to probably be difficult to appraise. And they had like Rhode Island license plates on, and I know you can do both, but I was like, you're definitely not going to know the difference between this, where I am here, and a house that is closer to the water. So
yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for appraisers for many years was called geographical competency. That's what you want. Mm-hmm. And I cover about 7 counties here in Georgia. They're really small. I can get around them very, very quickly, but I've taken the time to learn those areas. And with the help of the internet and help of MLS systems, you can learn that pretty quickly, and you can learn those markets. But, if you're not doing a lot of work in them, you're not going to learn it as quick. But what happened with the AMCs being in place and everything, the shortage came from the fact that most appraisers like myself were not making the money or making, good fees at the time. But we were also being put under strict deadlines, and it just wasn't financially feasible for me to take on a trainee. I don't have those relationships anymore. And, the AMCs, they don't really like, a lot of these lenders out there as well, and some of these agencies, they won't allow trainees to go out there and inspect properties, so why am I going to take on a trainee doing lender work when that lender is specifically saying, no, you can't have a trainee go off on their own out there and do that. Well, if I'm training you, and after say 6-7 months, I'm signing that report and I think you're eligible to do it, you should be able to go do it on your own. I still have to go out there with them. Well, if I'm going to go out there with them, I might as well just do it myself.
Yeah. So there's like, you can't divide and conquer, right? You have to be there with them. So that's going to be,
So that's just another factor in why, they think that there's a barrier or a shortage of appraisers. It's actually a shortage. We in the appraisal community call it a shortage of appraisers not willing to work for pennies on a dollar for AMCs. Plain and simple.
so let me ask you this. So now I always do this, right? Now it always becomes about me because now I have questions because it's very interesting. And I remember that time that you were talking about when they changed all the guidelines. And I'll just let you know from the real estate perspective, this is what we were sort of hearing when that adjustment and change happened was, okay, you have, the real estate agent refers her buyer client to her loan officer. Then the loan officer calls his brother-in-law, who's an appraiser, and says, hey, I need this to comp out at $600,000. And that was the problem. That's what we were hearing, that's what the problem was. But I think there were probably bigger problems than that.
There were. I mean, I remember those days of having lenders call me up and saying, hey, can you do a pencil check? Can you do a comp check? Or can you let me know if you can get extra money on this or extra value on it? I remember those days.
Yeah.
But you have that in every profession out there. And with the way that things have gone in the appraisal profession, we have so many laws and regulations. We are one of the highest regulated professions out there.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't realize that. And we have to abide by USPAP, abide by state laws, federal laws, this law, that law. I mean, it is just insane what we actually have to abide by and what we have to do out there.
It's so interesting because as a real estate agent, we have state of Massachusetts laws, we have, fair housing laws, we have, that are on a federal line as well. We have all those too, but I don't see that anyone's policing any of it. I think that's where maybe one of our problems are because we have a lot of rules and regulations, just that not everybody is abiding by them. Let me back up into that's what it was, that a little example I gave. So now my understanding is I, as the real estate agent, have my buyer client. I refer my buyer client to my loan officer. We got something under agreement. The loan officer then goes to this appraisal company, the appraisal management company. From there, it's dispersed to the appraisers. So are you trying to build your relationships now with those AMCs? I think that's what you were saying right there.
There are, I think, 225 registered AMCs in the state of Georgia. I work for 2 of them.
Wow.
I found it to be more lucrative to go the private route instead of working with the lenders. So that's another part of the shortage, is because I don't work with all these AMCs and I'm not on their panel. So I don't see all the orders that come in, and they may be right around my backyard. Mm-hmm. But I've chosen not to do that because of my own various business reasons and because of how this process works. I chose to start building my business almost 3 years ago towards the private work, where I work with people like yourself, agents doing pre-listings, consulting, divorce cases, litigation work, just market value appraisals for a homeowner just wanting to know what their house is worth. I measure homes and get paid for it. So there's a lot of things that I built to get away from that because A, it's more lucrative for me. B, I have that relationships, business again, which I love so much. Instead of a faceless business, I'm actually building relationships again. And that's what I like to do.
Yeah. And, it actually makes a lot of sense because I guess I never put much thought into it, but it definitely watered down that fee of, if it was $700, it's watering it down by the time it gets to you and you are out there doing all the work and research. You're going to town halls and you're pulling the jackets and you're doing all that, to get all this information. And I don't think that anybody really thoroughly understands that. So I can see why you would want to go the private route to do that. And there are many times that I get people who will ask me to do, an analysis for a divorce or for an estate. And I was like, well, I can do one for you. But you really want an appraiser to do that. So I do always refer out an appraiser to do that. So I can see how that's actually more beneficial to you. Mel, did you have any other questions before I pop into some?
I was just going to ask the question that we asked him off air.
Yeah.
When Mary was here. Mary was here a little bit ago and asked you a question of, do you like or mind when you meet real estate agents at these properties and they have sort of their own, where's the word? Comps. And sometimes I even heard that like some agents will bring in if they got multiple offers, so they can like sort of say or like show you that like everyone was sort of in the same boat with going over asking and sort of justifying it. Yeah. Justifying it. Do you like that, or do you sort of think that that's stepping over the bounds?
I don't think it's stepping over the bounds. I mean, your job as an agent is to do what's best for your buyer or seller. Your job for your sellers is to get them the most money. Obviously, you want to support that. So your job is to support your price and what you listed it for. That's or whatever offer you took. That's your job. My job is to now go out and do my job to support the market value. So I love when I get that information from agents because of the fact that it gets me in the mind of what you're thinking. It shows me what you're looking at and how you came up with that price instead of trying to guess. And I may use some of your comps and maybe they're good. I may look at your information and go, wow, way off base here. Okay, okay, this is not good. But at least if a reconsideration of value comes back or anything else comes back to me, I can at least go out there and prove and say, look, I looked at their information. I just didn't deem it to be worthy or deem it to be correct. While they're supporting this higher price, I've got all this data here that shows it should be less, so that's why I like to get that information. It helps me out, but it helps me get in the mind of what you're thinking.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I want to do some rapid fire stuff with you.
Boom.
Okay. So when people are adding in their contract and it ends up in the purchase and sales agreement that it's, contingent upon or the appliances, washer, dryer, the living room set, the kitchen table, all these other items are included in the sale. What do you have to do with that? Like when you're seeing that on a purchase and sales agreement?
Personal property. I can't appraise personal property. I can appraise the land and the home itself. That's going to be something you're going to have to determine because not every home includes all that stuff in a sale.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about the problem with that. When we always say, well, you have to do an outside contract with that. We can't put it into the purchase and sales agreement.
Yeah. It's like I'm offering you that price because I'm getting all these personal properties, but we can't value those personal properties with the price.
So the price will come down lower, right? Do you come across that a lot? And you have to explain it to people?
Yeah, here and there, but I'll explain it in my report because we do get the contract. If we're doing a purchase, the appraisers get the contract to actually read over and see those types of things in there and read any stipulations or anything. So that's stuff I want to know, but I'll put it in my report that hey, the purchase price was based off of all this other stuff being included. However, that's personal property. Sorry.
All right. Here's some of my rapid fire things. One is a pool. Does it give you, do you do anything with pools?
Depends. Do you want quick answers?
I want you to, I'm going to rapid fire questions, but you're going to answer.
Okay. It depends. Depends on where you're located. Depends on, your market. It depends on lots of factors, size, if it's typical for the area, it's typical for homes. If you live in a subdivision that has 2 pools already that you're paying an HOA for, is somebody going to actually pay more for your house because they're their own private pool? Maybe, maybe not, but it's you have to derive that from the market.
Okay, perfect. The other question I had, I don't know in your area, but I know you're from, the New Jersey area too. So with a raised ranch split entry, you walk in the front door, you go down maybe 5 steps and you can go up 5 steps. So that lower level, somebody puts a bedroom down there. Is that considered a bedroom?
It could be you can call it whatever you want. It just may not count as livable space. If it's below grade, it might be considered in your market area an actual basement, even if half of it's below grade. It might be a basement, and basements can be finished the way they want. You can call it a basement. It just may not add actual gross living area, which is your above grade area of the home, but it will add value if it's finished or not.
Okay. So because that's a big question that we get here with these raised ranches that we have. And people are like, well, it's, I have a walkout and I was like, it doesn't really matter to the appraiser for some reason or another. And that's in our area. So I don't know if it is where you are.
We call them terrace levels in the great state of Georgia. Well, that's what agents call them.
Oh, I'm going to use that because it sounds better, don't you think? A terrace level. It makes it sound.
No.
fancy.
Don't forget I ever said that. Don't bring that up north. Come on. I don't want to get blamed for it.
We're a little cooler than that. Yeah, so that is always a common question. But let's just say you are in a house and the basement is below grade and it is finished. What is the equation that you're giving, or a percentage difference between? Is it still considered living space if it's finished?
No.
Below grade?
A basement's a basement. It's a basement per ANSI standards, per Fannie Mae standards, per all standards. I wrote a blog on it on my page, but it's actually considered a basement. Basements add value, whether they're finished or unfinished. They still add value to a home. Now, if they are finished, well, now you got to take into the account of what's the quality of the finishes, how much of it is finished, because you see a lot of basements, especially up in the Northeast, obviously from where I'm from up there as well, that your above grade area that you walk in on might have granite everything, marble floors, beautiful crown molding. It's finished to the cheese, recessed lighting. Then you go to the basement and what do you got? A drop ceiling with shag carpeting. I mean, hello.
And music playing in the background, right? Bum, 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 bum.
But that basement is not finished to those standards. So obviously lesser quality of a finished basement is going to determine what its value is. And that's something that you have to extract from the marketplace, comparing basements to other homes that have basements to homes that don't have basements, and kind of find out what's the value of an unfinished basement per square foot, and what's the value of the finishes after you get that. So there's a lot that goes into it as well.
Okay, you walk into a room and there is no closet. Is that considered a bedroom? Could it be?
It depends on what the size of the room is. I forget what the dimensions are. I think it's got to have 5 to 7 foot ceilings. It's got to be something like 100 square feet, or don't bank on this. I could actually send it to you so you can get it out to your listeners properly.
Well, I know around here it's 70 square feet of living space, a window and a door.
Yeah. So if it has a closet, if it doesn't, you can still call it a bedroom, as long as it has ingress, egress, has a door, and you can get out to like the actual level ground. You're not jumping out a full floor length or whatever, or have to climb up to get out the window, or the window's too small. It's got to meet certain standards in order to be considered a bedroom.
A bedroom, yeah. We get that one all the time. Well, it doesn't have a closet, so you can't count it as a bedroom.
Yeah. No,
that's not going to work.
It's
That's
a myth.
Yeah, that is a myth. Are you looking at, when you're doing your analysis? And again, I always tell people, the way that you're doing things are a lot more sophisticated than how I'm doing them. Well, which I think, because I'm looking in MLS, I'm looking at a sold property. I'm trying to compare apples to apples. So if I'm looking at a, 4-bedroom colonial, I'm going to appraise it to other 4-bedroom colonials. Do you ever sort of sway away from that? Like, could you do a cape with a colonial?
You typically want to stay with a colonial. You want to stay as close as possible. Now, like ranch homes, I'd compare a ranch and a Cape Cod, together. They're kind of very similar. It's a half story more, but I mean, I would, if that's what I needed to do, I could use that as a principle of substitution. You got to also keep in mind, if you don't have all those sales, what are other buyers looking at? What are other types of homes they're looking at? So if they're looking at ranch homes, and there's not a lot of them on the market, and then your buyers are also looking at Cape Cods or looking at split levels, you could kind of get a gauge of maybe using the principle of substitution on that and say, okay, well, I can start to compare these together because this is what they're looking at. Maybe they're not looking at colonials because they don't want to go up steps or a lot of steps or something. So there's lots of different ways you can gauge what to look at, but I would definitely not do a ranch to a colonial or something of that nature. And also on top of that, I will say, and maybe I'll get yelled at for this, but here in the Atlanta market, I typically don't see a big difference between a 3-bedroom home and a 4-bedroom home.
Oh, good. Thanks. That's a good one.
Or a 4-bedroom home to a 5-bedroom home. And here's why, because I'm already calculating the gross living area of the home. I'm including that in there. If you have a 5,000 square foot above grade home that has 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, and then you have another house that's, somewhat similar size, but it's only got 4 bedrooms and it's got 3 bathrooms. Well, maybe at some point they make another bedroom out of it or something. They have the space to do so, but I don't see, I don't see the big difference between a 4-bedroom and 5-bedroom. I see it more in the size of the home, in the gross living area of the home. If I'm already computing for that, I could be considered double dipping by making an adjustment for an extra bedroom. When maybe it's an office or that we're calling it, and then somebody makes it a bedroom. So just to keep that in mind, sometimes you don't see that in your markets.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so glad that you brought that up because it brought me back to when I do my CMAs for my clients. I actually bring them into the office. I bring them live into MLS because I want to be able to show them everything I see. I don't want to just come to them with paper. I mean, I could potentially be giving them the top sales just to get a listing or the bottom sales to get a quick list, a quick sale. So I like for them to see everything with me. And we sort of go through all of them. And that comes up a lot where they're like, well, I have 4 bedrooms or, oh, well, that house has 4 bedrooms and I only have 3. But I'll say, but square footage wise, you're 2,500 square feet and they're 2,500 square feet. So it just means that your 3 bedrooms are bigger than their 4 bedrooms. So I'm glad that
bathrooms will be different. Yeah, bathrooms will definitely. I always see that there's an adjustment for bathrooms. The more bathrooms, the better, obviously. But bedrooms, it just comes down to you see people that have buy a 5-bedroom house and then they knock down a wall and make it one big huge suite or something. So now it's a 4-bedroom home. So I don't see it, but again, it's market driven. So look at your market and make sure you're comparing those things and look at, hey, are 4-bedroom homes of this size selling the same as much as a 5-bedroom house is this size? And if that's true or very close, you can tell the difference that there may not be a big difference with it.
To all our WATD listeners, you are listening to Talk Real Estate Roundtable. I just sort of got way off track and went right by our half hour, when we do our little commercials, but that's okay. We are in studio this morning with a very nice guest. He was very willing to come on like last minute, so I really appreciate it. He goes by Scap, but his name is Mark, and I don't want to say it the wrong way. So Scafeditz. Yep. There, I have it right there. Scafeditz.
There you go.
My favorite people now.
Yep. We have Mark Scafeditz with us, goes by Scap. He's from Atlanta, Georgia, but he is, I don't know. I just sort of liked the way he spoke and he's right to the facts and he's good at what he does. And I can tell that from right through Clubhouse. So I'm glad to have him as a guest today. We are pre-recorded. I want to mention that one other time to our WAT listeners, but if you have questions, I can get them to Mark. He's going to give his information at the end too, so you can reach right out to him as well. But you can always text me. I'm around. I'm just not in town right now to do this live. So 781-294-4848. That is my cell phone number. Text me, call me, do whatever you need to get your question over to me. And I'll make sure if it's for me, I'll answer it. And if it's for Scap, I will certainly get that information over to him. So I just want to check in with our producer there, Rob. How are we doing for time?
Hey guys, we got about 7-8 minutes left, I think.
All right. Well, perfect. Great. Rob, you can cut this out, but did you hear the Queen died?
Yes, we're running the
Queen's initial call.
we're running the CBS alert right now on ATD.
Oh, you are? Okay. You can cut that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
cut it out. It'll be,
The joy of being pre-recorded, by the way, Scap. I don't know if you heard the Queen
story though.
The Queen died. God bless the Queen.
Yes.
Okay. So we will take.
So we'll cut that out, and I'm still rolling, and I'll give you the 5-minute warning.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we'll be sure to make sure that Scap gives you all of his information at the end of our show, so you can reach out to him. Even though he is not, physically in our area, he is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure that he'd be very willing to help you. And if you need an appraiser, I'm sure you must have a connection, right, to this area.
I mean, I do run a group of over 4,000 independent appraisers across the country, and I know a bunch of them from the Northeast. I have a bunch of really good ones. So
perfect. Well, I'm going to have to get that list from you as well. So, because again, I do see this a lot when it comes to divorce and when it comes to, estate sales, needing to refer people. So, especially when I know that one of mine is like close to retirement. So that would be great. How about some final thoughts for our final minutes here, Scap? Like, what are some of the key things that maybe I didn't bring up that you would like our listeners to know, and you can educate them on?
I think, for the most part, it's when it comes to appraisers, I know we touched on the different types of values, market value and that stuff. I want everybody to know this, that whether it's for a pre-appraisal, whether it's for a refinance, whether it's for a purchase, no matter what it is, real estate appraisers follow the same process. Okay. Our scope of work may change depending on what what the purpose of that appraisal is. Obviously, if it's an estate, I am doing some different stuff. If it's for a refinance, I'm doing different stuff. However, the process, the thought process, the way we do things, it's all the same. Nothing changes. And some people out there will say, oh, well, you get the purchase contract, so the number already. Well, I know what you're purchasing it for, but that doesn't mean I'm going to agree with it. I know it doesn't mean that I'm going to say that that's what it's actually worth in the marketplace, because I have to do my job and follow the guidelines and laws and regulations. So the process is pretty much the same. The thought process is out there. So, I would say that for any of your listeners, especially if they're, with dealing with real estate agents and appraisers, I just think everybody needs to kind of just do some more research, kind of just determine and look at who does what and who does what and how they do it. Agents do things differently than appraisers. Appraisers obviously do different things than agents do, but they can work hand in hand really well together, if done properly. Just don't get mad at the appraiser all the time. No, just don't.
I have to tell you, this is like a little, maybe it isn't a secret, but the person that we are the nicest to in our industry, I mean, we're nice to everybody, but we're super, super nice to the appraiser. And do you know, you're the only person that can call us and say, all right, I want to do the appraisal tomorrow at 9. And I'm like, okay, be there. It doesn't even matter that it's, my grandmother's 80th birthday. I'll be there, So, well, my grandmother, that would be my mother, actually. Yes, we're always very, very nice to our appraisers.
And I think one thing we didn't touch on that I saw in your notes that you sent over was, I think a lot of people need to understand the difference between an actual appraisal, that I would do versus the tax assessor. Tax assessor is just they do what's called a mass appraisal out there. So a lot of times they're not right. They're just using that as a guide to give you your tax assessment, and kind of, they may not be comparing homes the right way, and they don't know the inside condition of your home and things of that nature. So that's one side of the tax assessor, where they're not the same as us. Okay.
And they do 2-year prior sales is what they.
Yeah. And they have a specific date, and they have different ways, but they're using what they call a mass appraisal. They're not doing just an individual private appraisal or personal appraisal of your home to actually come up with that value. And I think the other thing is along those lines with the mass appraisals and appraisals that we do is that you need to understand that the information comes pretty much from different places as well. Even though I may use tax records, I try not to use tax records because they're not right all the time. An appraiser measures a house for a reason, because tax assessments are not always correct. And you see it listed in MLS a lot, where the agent says the home is 2,700 square feet. Then you get out there and measure and go, wow, it's only 1,300 square feet above grade. And it's got a, 1,400 square feet above grade, and it's got a 1,300 square foot basement, so they're wrong, so that's why we just do our in-depth analysis. That's how we do things. Just, you just got to kind of be patient with it and just realize that we're just trying to do the best we can.
And you're going to town hall and you're pulling you're pulling the records and you're looking all of that. And there's 2 things I want to talk about right now, and I don't know which way to go because we have limited time, but I'll go with this one. Do you feel as if we're going to have I feel like we're in a different place right now, where the sale prices I'm looking at are based on that artificial inflated offer that somebody accepted, right? So that's the actual sale price on that house. But that is not where the buyer's head is anymore. And I just put another listing on the market, and they were on with somebody else. And honestly, when I look at the sold comps, that's where the house should have been priced. But the buyers are saying, now I looked at the list price of what the house, instead of looking at the sold, I was looking at what the list price was based on, all right, well, when those agents put those on the market, they were looking 6 months back. And I did my analysis on that. So instead of this house being on the market for $569, where my comps were coming in at sold, I'm on at $499 and still not having activity. So I'm wondering, you're going to come in and appraise it, you're going to see a higher number than I feel the market is willing to bear right now. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, that could be fair. I mean, again, it just depends on what the data is out there and what's currently out there and what I'm looking at. It also depends on the market trends. But again, in this market with higher interest rates, people who could have afforded that home, 7 months ago can no longer afford that home at that price. So of course they're coming down and they're looking at different things that fit their price range. And that's why prices keep dropping and dropping and dropping because expectations are too high. Buyers' expectations are like all-time lows now. Like we got the upper hand. We can bring this down to what we need. It's just a different market. And it just depends on the data. It depends on what has sold out there, where people are actually putting their money to. And that's all we can do. That's all we can do as appraisers, even as agents, is just look at the data, look at the trends, and educate everybody as best we can.
All right. So I have a quick story to tell you. It's not even a question or anything. So I had somebody who called me, just wanted to get some information or some input from me or he just wanted to bounce some stuff off the wall. About 5 years ago, purchased a property. It was listed as a 3-unit property. And then he went to get a permit on it. And lo and behold, it ended up being a 2-unit property. How did that appraise? You know what I mean? Like as a 3-unit property, if it's listed as you go, like the first thing you go into town hall and it says right on there, 2 units, like a 2-family, not a 3-family. How would that happen?
Either somebody didn't do their job correctly and didn't really look at the information and properly gather it. That's probably my guess. Incompetence, I would think, because I look at everything and I've had similar situations where I've had to call it out and go, wait a minute here. This says per zoning and everything says it's only can be up to a duplex, but yet you're telling me this is a quadplex in here. And I'd have to go back and look at zoning, find out if it's grandfathered in, if it was a legal zoning now, if it's grandfathered in and it's non-conforming. There's lots of things. They could have changed those documents. And maybe the zoning when it was built was grandfathered in, but now maybe they only allow it to be up to a 2-unit property. So we don't know until we actually look at that information and kind of see when things may have changed, or again, just could have been incompetence.
Are you also looking at septic system, like number of bedrooms and versus how many bedrooms they're saying? So I'm marketing a 4-bedroom house, but it's a 3-bedroom septic.
Yeah, you got to take into account those things. You have to really look at that kind of data because again, it's got to be permitted. You got to look at all the information, especially when it comes to septics. They want to know, especially Fannie Mae or FHA, at least FHA, they want to know where that well is located, where that septic is, and they want to know if that septic system is utilized correctly or the right amount for that home or typically in that market.
Oh, perfect. Well, there is our music. That means we are at our end. I can't thank you enough. Mark Scafeditz goes by Scap. You are just so wonderful to have here on our show with us today. Do you want to give out your number and your information for people to follow along with you?
Absolutely. You can give me a call or text me at 404-421-0055. If you want to go that route, you can also reach me at wiwapp@gmail.com, which is my business email. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me pretty much anywhere. If you go to my website, scaptheappraiser.net, I've got some blogs out there. It's got all my contact information as well. It's where my podcast can be found. So
perfect. Just good stuff.
Just put in Mark Scafeditz. I'll pop up somewhere.
Yes, you will. So thank you again so much. You have some great stuff on your website. To all our listeners, I hope that you will go there. Of course, you can find us on bostonconnect.com, and you can find us all our past shows on Talk Real Estate Roundtable on your podcast app or on our website. And we hope that you will join us.